It was a quick shift.
It was a very quick, yeah.
All right, I think we're live.
Yay! Okay, just muted my YouTube. Okay. Hello, everybody. Hello. Good to see you. Let's wait for a minute for more people to join. We currently have 58 people.
That's wonderful.
Yay. Hello.
I know it's really late on that side of the world.
Yeah, well, wherever you guys are from, hello, everyone. And we hope you're having a good day, morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are. Hi, hello. Greetings. Okay, so I think we're pretty much ready to start. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Novakid Teacher Development webinar. We're really happy to see you all here. We're happy to see familiar faces, familiar names in the chat box, as well as those who are joining us for the very first time. Welcome. We are happy you're here. We hope that you're going to find this webinar helpful, interesting. So let's begin. As you all know, today's topic is going to be something that's been quite a hot topic in the online ESL industry, and it's gamification. We all know that gamification is not only a fantastic tool, but it's also a huge part of the Novakid curriculum. As you know, our school is really passionate about that aspect. So today's webinar is going to be super special. We've prepared a few activities for you, so stay with us till the very end. I would highly recommend to pay special attention to every presentation slide that you see, because there's going to be something hidden there for you. Before we get into the details of that, let me introduce our amazing host, Brittany, who I'm sure some of you already know and had a chance to share and exchange great tips and ideas on teaching. For those of you who don't know, Brittany is our teacher here at Novakid. She's an experienced teacher trainer as well. She's been teaching ESL for over 10 years across all levels and age groups. Welcome, Brittany. Hello.
Hello, Elena, and thank you so much for such a warm welcome. It's really great to see so many familiar faces, especially from the Philippines, well, from everywhere. But I know that it's 3 o'clock here, so I'm sure it's pretty early for you over on that side of the world. So I really appreciate each and every one of you who are here today. As Elena mentioned, today's topic is gamification. We'll talk about what gamification is, as well as how to incorporate it into our lessons and make the most of it. Gamification is the future and, well, the present of online learning. And although it might seem like a new topic to you or something that you've recently heard of, Novakid has been incorporating it into its lessons for over 2 years. And I don't know about you, Elena, but I am proud to be part of a company that is at the forefront of this change and this shift in education. So let's get started by looking at our agenda for today. Here we have our presentation on gamification, and we will start by looking at what is gamification. We'll take a look at why it's important and what are the components of gamification. After we talk a little bit about what gamification is, we will look at the Novakid Game World, the curriculum by Novakid that incorporates gamification throughout. We'll have a short activity or game to see how well you can apply these concepts in a game I like to call, Is it Gamification? And finally, we will sum up with a couple case studies to help you troubleshoot. And finally, we will have a short question and answer at the end. Now, before we get into our presentation, let's talk about those contests that Elena mentioned. Today, we will have 2 different contests for this webinar. The first starts right now, and that is our hidden image contest. During the webinar, you will see one of my personal favorite characters, Tim. He will be hiding throughout the slides. He's a very distinguished frog. Make sure you count how many times you can see Tim on the slides. At the end of the webinar, submit your answer in the feedback form and be one of the first to win a prize. The second contest that we have will take place after the webinar, but it also starts now. And that is for you to follow us on Instagram. If you aren't already, check out the QR code on your screen. You can scan the QR code and start following Novakid Career right now. And then at the end of our webinar today, you can share your insights. What did you like? What would you like to take away? You can even include what you'd like to see in future webinars. And make sure you share it in your Insta stories and tag Novakid Career. And maybe you will be a lucky one to win a prize. All right, so we have our 2 contests today, but let's get back into our topic for today, which is gamification. What is it? At its core, gamification is including elements of gameplay in a non-game context. Gamification is used all over the world in different ways. It's used in businesses, in companies, in promotions, and most recently, it is used in education, and especially in teaching languages. But why does it work? Well, gamification plays into the basic needs of autonomy and value by allowing students to control how they learn or their path of learning. And when students have this control, they have a lot of positive outcomes. So let's take a look at these positive outcomes together. Elena has prepared a short activity for us, so I'm going to pass the mic back to her so she can explain it to us.
Thank you very much, Brittany. All right, guys, so we want to once again tickle your brain a little bit and start with a bit of a brainstorm. Let me share my screen. You are currently seeing the QR code. Please scan it using your phone and you will access Menti platform where you will be asked to answer a very simple question. Let's wait a couple more seconds to make sure everybody can access the platform. If you can't scan the code, please follow the link in the chat box. Our amazing moderator, Lisa, has just sent it. Show us some hearts to let us know that you are here. Great. Okay, so the question is, why is gamification important in learning English? Let's hear your ideas on what are the actual benefits of including gamification elements in English learning process. Heightens interest. Couldn't agree more. Elements of gameplay. It's fun, it's engaging, for sure. It's interactive. Wow, so many great ideas. And they're moving so fast, I can't keep up. I'm trying to grasp. That's right, keeps kids interested. Simulates fun learning. It makes learning fun. Immersive learning, participation, all of these are great, great, great answers. Let's wait a couple more seconds to complete our word cloud. I love how ideas just keep on coming. Don't be shy, you can submit multiple times. All right. Encouragement, fantastic. Thank you very much, guys. These are all great. We are now going to proceed with our presentation. So I am passing the word back to Brittany.
All right, thank you, Elena. And so it's no secret, this is one of my favorite interactive activities that we have during the webinars because I really like to learn from fellow teachers. I like to see what they consider to be good attributes, and I like to learn from them as well. So many of you have touched on these four main answers that we're going to go through together now. It's important to engage students, as many of you have mentioned, in a way that is different from what they're taught in schools. This means no textbooks and no boring activities. Motivation, as many of you have mentioned, is the key to learning. If students are bored, they won't be motivated, and their participation will decrease. It's important for us to provide our students with opportunities to have these interactive activities and for them to be able to apply these to real life situations. When we give them these opportunities to make mistakes, we're helping to reduce their stress because they're able to make these mistakes in a safe environment within our classroom. So great job. All of your answers are fantastic. But let's look now at what components are in gamification. This is another one of my favorite activities, and that is our fill in the blanks activity. Here are the four main components of gamification in the ESL classroom. Don't worry if you don't know all of them. Try to choose one or two of these and fill in the blanks. What are the components of gamification? Oh, we have make mistakes. Excellent. Competition.
A clear learning objective.
Very good.
Well done, guys.
Let's see, we have the last one.
Ability to monitor student learning.
Fantastic.
You guys are really fast.
So I think we have all of the answers now. Let's go through them one at a time. First is non-competitive competition. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds like an oxymoron, but what we mean by that is whatever the student does during class is not going to affect them long-term. If you think about a school setting, it's something that won't affect their final grade. They have these opportunities to make mistakes, like we'll get into in a moment, but we want to provide them opportunities to have competition, but in a way that is self-directed and therefore non-competitive. We want to have a clear learning objective. This learning objective should be made aware to your students. Usually, they will have these components of gamification after they've been presented with new material. If we're at the presentation part of a lesson, this isn't going to be gamified. We will be using gamification later when they already know what they're studying. Gamification provides opportunities to make mistakes and learn why. And this is really important. If you think about other games like quiz games, where a student answers a question and they're told yes or no, and then we move on, that's not gamification. We want our students to be able to understand and learn, because by making the mistakes, it will lead to higher retention and higher confidence later on. Finally, the ability to monitor student learning. And this is within your feedback. This is during your review lessons. This is during the actual class where you can show the student how they're doing. This is in your stars and your other rewards. And this is a big component of gamification where the student can see how well they're doing and they can feel accomplished by earning badges or they're earning stars, or later on, you'll see that they're able to earn other things in their kids area. Now, gamification is not just about playing games, as you can see that. And gamification is a little bit different from game-based learning. While gamification involves elements of gameplay to teach a topic or to have a different lesson, game-based learning involves using an actual game to teach something. And lessons at Novakid incorporate both of these types of learning because they both have their merits. Now, I'm sure we've all had students that have said, "Can we play a game now?" When your student says this, they're more likely to be talking about game-based learning, because while gamification incorporates elements of gameplay, it doesn't necessarily look like a game. So we're going to take a look at a couple of slides together now. Your job will be to decide which of these two slides is gamification. You can also include why. Why is one slide gamification and one side game-based learning? While you're looking at these slides, my biggest tip is to ask yourself, would my student consider this a game? If the answer is yes, it's probably game-based learning and not gamification. Let's take a look at these slides together. Here we have two slides from a higher level curriculum. They're from the same lesson. One of them is game-based learning and one of them is gamification. Which one is which and why? Let's see, do we have any answers?
Not yet. Okay, we have A is gamification and B is game-based learning from Ellen.
This is the correct answer.
Good job, Ellen.
Why? Why is A gamification?
Think of the components we've mentioned earlier.
So here, A is gamification because it allows the student more autonomy. They're able to choose what answers they want to create. They have options for must, have to, don't have to. They have 6 different options for the adjectives, and they have a ton of options for the jobs. They can direct their own learning and create their own sentences. If they don't know what it means to have good social skills, they don't have to use that answer. They are able to make mistakes in other ways, and you can guide them towards the correct answers. If you look at B, this is clearly a game. You press the spinner and the student has no choice over which sentence they have to answer. And if they don't know what jobs you need to be organized for, it's going to increase their stress. So we want to be playing these games after we are confident that the student has mastered the language and making sentences on their own terms. Let's look at our next one together. This is also from a higher level higher level at Novakid. These two slides look very similar, but one is more gamification and the other one is more game-based learning. And it looks like we have some correct answers. Great.
B is gamification.
Fantastic. In this one, it's helpful to really ask yourself, which one would my student consider to be a game? And in this case, playing a game like charades is more game-based learning than B, which is creating sentences. In both aspects, they are able to choose what they want to do and choose what they want to act out or create sentences about. But in A, there is a higher level of stress that could happen as the student maybe is shy and is nervous about acting something out and maybe the teacher not guessing it correctly. Whereas B, they can choose the vocabulary words that they're confident in using and use the grammar correctly. Let's look at our last example, which doesn't come from the same level. They are from a higher level and a lower level, but one of them is gamification and the other is game-based learning. And I think after the last two examples, this one is probably very clear. B is game-based learning. It is very clearly a board game, whereas A is gamification, where the student will be filling in the gaps or reading and matching. Well done. You guys did great.
You guys are amazing. And thank you for also sharing their explanations in the chat box. We see them all.
All right. So now that we've talked about what gamification is, what the components of gamification are, and done a little activity to decide what is gamification versus what is game-based learning, let's move on now to talk about Novakid Game World. What is Novakid Game World? Maybe you already teach at Novakid and you know exactly what this is. Maybe you're not a Novakid teacher, but you can learn a lot from Novakid Game World on putting all the components of gamification together. Because Novakid Game World is the new curriculum created by Novakid to incorporate gamification through all levels. It will eventually replace the general English curriculum, but is currently available for only our lower level students. Very soon, however, it will be for all levels. And Novakid Game World consists of 3 parts. The first is one-to-one English lessons, and these are taught by Novakid teachers. And it is similar to the old curriculum, but it now incorporates the new storyline, the new characters, and new interactive features, which my students love. The next part is the comic book. And this is what the lessons are based off of. The comic books are a set of stories about the students at the Novakid Magic Academy as they learn the magic language. Do you want to take a guess as to what the magic language is? That's right. It's English. And finally, we have the kids area. And this includes a few games that students can play before or after their lessons to earn additional rewards, as well as reinforce what they learned in class. Now, it's really important to know that all 3 of these parts work together. And without one of these parts, the whole idea of gamification won't come together. So if you are a Novakid teacher and you are teaching these one-on-one English lessons, it's important to know that you are a part of this gamification at Novakid, and you're a big part of it. Let's look at why. So first we have our one-to-one English lessons. And here we have one of our fantastic teachers, Lauren. And this, if you're a Novakid teacher, you should be very familiar with. This is what the interface looks like when you are in the classroom. If you teach at another company, I'm sure you also have one-to-one English lessons or one on however many students are in the class, at which point you will be teaching a set of lessons. Here you can see that we are incorporating those elements of gamification right into the one-on-one English lessons. We're bringing in the comic book and we're tying it all together. Now, before we get into the other 2 areas, let's share some ideas. What kinds of other activities do you usually do in your one-to-one English lessons? Think about activities within the curriculum or the slides themselves, or extra activities that you bring in. What kinds of things do you do in your one-to-one English lessons? Don't worry if they're not gamification, just any ideas of activities that you do.
Read role play, simulation role play, great. Dialogues, fill in the gaps. Reading, singing, and dancing, I love that. Voice animation, spelling games, role play with stuffed animals, very creative.
These are all great answers. Let's take a look at some of them together. We have board games, role play slides, word searches, drag and drop, singing. We have dancing. We have acting things out. We have creating a story. And I think we can all agree that bringing in all of these things only benefits your students. Giving them all sorts of ways to practice English will only help them increase their level and their confidence. The second part of the Novakid Game World is the comic books. And these are a set of videos that students can watch based around the Magic Academy. Now, each level has their own comic book, and there are different quests. Quests are super important in gamification. Throughout these quests, students can read the books, they can interact with the characters by playing games, and we actually take these comic books and put them right into our one-to-one English lessons, therefore connecting them again. By bringing them together, the student is encouraged to read the comic books before or after their class so that they can communicate with you during their lessons. I have a couple of students who love the role play slides. They'll tell me who they are. They'll tell me who I am. We will use our little microphone to help decide who is speaking. And we really have a lot of fun with this. Again, it's student directed. They're telling me who they want to be, and we are acting them out together. Some of them are even like, okay, let's switch. It's your turn. And I love that. I love when my students have the confidence to tell me, this is what I want to do, and this is what you will do. And then we can work together. Now, I'm sure you've seen on this slide and on the previous slide for the one-to-one English lessons that there are a lot of characters in the Novakid Game World. And you're right. There are a ton of new characters. Each character has their own backstory. Each character has their friends. Some of the characters are good. Some of them are not so good. And the students really enjoy telling you, oh, Professor Slimosaurus, he's bad. But it's great because once you are in those role play slides, you're able to ask these concept checking questions based on the videos that the students have watched. These videos are also available to teachers, so I highly recommend watching them yourself. They're only about 4 or 5 minutes long, so that you also have an idea of what is happening in the story. You're able to bring this in, and when the student mentions a character, you can acknowledge that you know who they are. Now, everyone has their favorite character, and you'll
I can see our teachers also have, sorry to interrupt you, Brittany, their favorite characters. There's a lot of love goes to Marty and Jasper.
And your students too. Your students will also have a favorite character, which Absolutely. I love. Sometimes when I'm introducing these characters for the first time, my student will be like, that's me. And you'll find out a little bit later why they say that. Or they'll be like, that's my sister. And you're like, no, like that's Bella, like that's a different character. They're like, no, that's my sister. And they get really protective over these characters, which is fantastic because they're connecting with the material. So let's get to know some of these characters a little bit more. If you are not a Novakid teacher, don't worry. Here we're going to talk about 3 characters. We have Zorb, Tim, and Amisa. Who is the grumpy judge from Novachef?
Let's see how well you know those. Tim, of course. Thank you, Tess. The first
Tim
one. Yeah, Tim is popular.
Tim is hands down my favorite character. And only because, well, not only because he is a pretty cool frog, but mostly because my very first Novakid Game World lesson, I was teaching the lesson on Novachef. And we get to the slide with Tim, and my student's name is Tim. And he said, Tim, 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 Tim. And it was just funny. And it was one of those moments where we had been struggling to connect. He was a new student to me, and this was an instant connection, lots of laughs. So this is now my favorite character. And plus, he's just so grumpy, and he's just so fun. So our next character is Professor Slimosaurus's robotic sidekick. Who is that? We have Zor, very good. And our last one is she has a beautiful pendant and lives on a farm. And this is, by process of elimination, this is Amisa. Well done. Okay, now let's get into the last part of the Novakid Game World. And this is a very big part because this is the part that brings everything together and helps the student Connect all of those levels, those areas of gameplay, to where they can exchange for prizes. Now, this is the kids area, and I'm going to be completely honest with all of you. It's a bit of a mystery to me. I don't have children. I don't have my own account, and I don't, as a teacher, have access to this. But I begged and I pleaded for Elena to come and show us what this kids area is. And like you, I had a lot of questions. So before we get into it, before I pass over the floor, I'm going to say a big thank you to Elena for what she is about to share with all of us, because it is super insightful. So Elena, what is this mystery area?
Thank you, Brittany. I think we should all thank our content team, fantastic content team, and all the great minds behind this concept and behind Novakid Game World, which is fantastic and absolutely mind-blowing. And I'm so glad to see the comments from you guys that your students love Novakid Game World, that you love the characters, that you love the storylines. It really is great. So that's why today I would like to give you a little bit of a glimpse into what is actually happening in the kids area, which is what your students access and what your students see before they have the lesson with you. As you can see, there's a lot going on this picture, and that only should tell you that it's the whole learning process is so much more than just the lesson, the one-to-one lesson that the student has, which is obviously a huge part of their learning process. But if you look at this picture, and if you can look in the upper left-hand corner, you can see this cool avatar, which is what your students can actually get with the help of those stars that they earn. They choose the avatar, they can upgrade it. The coolest thing about it that they can upgrade the frame as well, which they spend their precious stars on. This is an amazing feature. I think if I was a kid, I would be obsessed with this. You can see the trophies that they earn, and that's another cool thing. They can also access mini games, which helps them to get into the leaderboard. And the coolest thing about it is that when they play those mini games, they actually get paired with another student from around the world who is connecting at the same time. And that adds a little bit of a competition element. And who doesn't like a bit of a competition when they're learning English, right? So these are all the features that contribute to that building motivation of your students and building their interest in coming back to that platform and enjoying their lessons. You can see the cool bubble in the very middle, which shows them either to start the lesson. Sometimes homework pops up there. Homework pops up there. So when they finish the class, the homework is automatically assigned to them. And once they complete it, they also get credited with extra stars, which go to their account, and they can later on spend on all these cool features that they actually work so hard for. You can see this amazing bright pink portal, which I believe takes them to the so-called nutty tales, and they consist basically of a clip or like a snapshot of the drawings that they've done during the lesson. It's like a screenshot, and next to it, there's going to be like a short funny story based on the target language that they've been learning. Then you can see this wonderful brunch on top of this picture, and a few fruits hanging on the brunch, which actually symbolize the levels that they accomplish at Novakid. So in this particular case, you can see that the student has successfully completed level 0, and it's gotten into like a proper fruit. And then you can see that they're in the process of sort of blossoming in the level 1 content. And later on, it will show them their achievements. And I think it's also a fantastic tool to show how much of a progress they've made. It builds their motivation even more. It shows their progress path. It shows that how they can get to a higher level. And this is all just fantastic. So you can see that the gamification elements are not only in the lesson, but also outside of classroom. And this all definitely contributes to building that student autonomy that Brittany was mentioning earlier. it helps to move from extrinsic motivation to intrinsic motivation and just spark that desire to learn in your students, like natural desire to learn and curiosity, and just genuinely being interested in this particular cool thing. So yeah, I hope that sheds some light on what's happening in the kids area. I see that some of you have been posting questions in the chat. Do not worry, we're going to be addressing all your questions. Again, our amazing moderator is going to collect all of the questions and we will address them at the end of the webinar. So yeah, I think for now, I'm going to pass the floor back to Brittany. I hope that was helpful.
I'm going to speak for everyone and say that it was super helpful, because I remember the first time I learned about this and my mind was blown and I didn't realize just how much went on behind the scenes. Because sometimes when you're a teacher and you're in the classroom, you think that this is what's available to the student. But I think now our teachers are more aware of everything that goes on into the whole gamification aspect at Novakid. So thank you again, Elena, for sharing what exactly happens in the kids area. And I think now we all have a little bit more of an idea of what our students actually have available to them. So thank you again. And now that we've looked at gamification and Novakid Game World, we're going to play a game. We're going to play the game, Is This Gamification? So in this game, you will be seeing a slide from our Novakid Game World curriculum. Your job will be to decide, is it gamification or not? It could be game-based learning. It could be something else entirely. But you will need to decide, is it gamification and why? Don't worry if you don't remember the components of gamification, because here they are. Let's go through them one more time. The features of gamification include a clear learning objective, lots of student interaction, and student autonomy, the ability to monitor the student learning and give feedback, opportunities for your students to make mistakes, and non-competitive activities. So keep these different features in mind when you're deciding, is this gamification? Let's look at them together. Our first one is a role play slide, and this is, I love the role play slides. This is from our level 2 curriculum.
I just love Gal.
They're just so fancy. Gal
cool.
And her mom and her grandma. So our role play slides gamification.
We have a lot of no's.
Okay. Why? Well, if you said no, why? Why do you not consider this to be gamification?
I10 says, I think yes.
Okay.
Natasha Jade also says yes. So we see that.
Role play slides are gamification. It's giving your student an opportunity to interact with the material. They're bringing in those elements from the storybook that they read. It gives you the opportunity to ask your concept checking questions, and it helps them to pick out those words that they know and communicate with you. You might have some students that are lower level who struggle with the role play slides, but it's still a great opportunity for them to be interacting both with you and the material. And again, if they make mistakes, it's okay. This is not a competition, but again, the students can say, I want to be Gal, or I want to be Queen Amelia, and they get those options and they can speak how they want to. So we are going to consider role play slides to be gamification. Our next one is board games. Are board games gamification? Here we go. Very good. Board games are not gamification. Board games are very much game-based learning. They are highly competitive. There is a high level of stress that's involved. If your student is like, I only want a 6, I only want a 6, I don't know the answer for 4. This is not going to help them reduce the stress of making mistakes.
Very accurate impersonation, Brittany.
Like 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. And I'm like, okay, like I will rig it so you can get a 6, no problem. So it's a very much a competition, and it's very much something your students will think is a game, and it's great for a reward at the end. Our next one is read and match. Is this gamification?
April says, I have a student like that too, Brittany.
They're so funny, especially when you're like in the lead and you're like, I hope I don't get a 6 because I really want them to win. But there's no pattern in the spinner. Like the spinner does what it wants to do.
It can be tricky.
So, okay. So here we have, yes, this is gamification. They are able to choose and match the words. If they're not sure what headphones are, they can skip that one and then go to a computer. Then by process of elimination, they might be able to figure out what it is. At this point, they've already been introduced to the vocabulary. So this is their first opportunity to match the words on their own. So our next one is a vocabulary introduction. Is this gamification? So this is your students' first presentation of the vocabulary on feelings. And as many of you are saying, this is correct. This is not gamification. When we are introducing something, we can't expect the student to know and apply elements of the game to something that they've never seen before. So when you think about the presentation, the practice, and the production of teaching, this is your presentation stage. And in the presentation stage, it's more you telling the student what it is. Maybe some listening and repeating. There is no choice. You are directing what you want them to do. You could turn this into gamification after, where you ask them to circle different things. But at its heart and at its core, vocabulary introduction or grammar introduction or any kind of introduction is not going to be gamification. Our next one are word searches and fast finisher games. Is this gamification? And here I see a lot of people saying game. If you think about it, game. Is gamification games? And they are not. This is a perfect example of game-based learning, as a lot of you have mentioned. This is a game. This is something your student will consider a game. It's not necessarily gamification. This, however, is one of my favorite games to play at the end of class. I wish it was across all levels, but it is really only in one of the levels within the curriculum. It's a great way for your students to practice their numbers. A lot of them struggle with their upper teens and their 20s. It's also a great opportunity for them to practice their letter names, because up until this point, they've only been learning letter sounds. It also shows you what their spelling skills are like when you tell them it's their turn to tell you the numbers. So this activity, this game, really does incorporate all sorts of skills that your student needs to be practicing. But it's not gamification. It's definitely game-based learning.
I love how someone mentioned, no, stressful. Very stressful. I would be stressed.
It's stressful for me too, as a teacher, when I'm letting my students tell me the numbers and I know that they're not strong spellers. And I'm like, oh gosh, like I really need to name the correct word, because if I don't tell the student the correct word, they're going to feel bad. So can I guess what the word is? It's just stressful all around, I think. But it's really a great activity for your students to be doing. Okay, and our next one is drag and drop. This is actually our last one. So this is a drag and drop activity. It is one of the new interactive features in the Novakid Game World. My students love them. They are able to have more control. They aren't just drawing on the screens, and they get to put activities or put the words into the sentences. So as many of you had said, this is gamification. The student is able to choose their answer. There isn't a big, if your student is wrong, it just goes back to its place. But when the student is correct, they get like an award or a ding, or they get the correct sentence. So we're rewarding them for the correct answers, but we're not punishing them for the incorrect answers. We're giving them those opportunities to make mistakes and to complete the activity. All right, so it seems like at this point, most of you are familiar now what gamification is, what it isn't, and how we are using it within the Novakid Game World. And if you are not a Novakid teacher, you can see some activities that maybe you can bring into your own teaching, different types of activities to bring this in to wherever you are teaching. But gamification isn't going to be perfect for every student. So we're now going to look at some case studies of common things that could happen in your lessons, and together we'll work to solving them and thinking of ideas on how to overcome them. So let's look at our first case study, which is from teacher Darth. Darth teaches Azra, a 12-year-old girl from Turkey, and Azra is in level 3. She is 12 and she is not interested in playing games. She thinks the comics are childish and the characters are not interesting. Let's help Darth encourage Azra and engage her in the material. What should he do? Now, while you're thinking of your answers, remember from our past webinars, some countries have educational systems that don't focus on the communicative method. They might be just reading and answering questions all day. This is going to affect how your student acts when they come to see you, where their lessons are completely different. How can you help her realize that it's okay to make mistakes, that it's okay to engage in the material and have fun and act a little silly? What can we do?
Wesley says, figure out what she likes and enjoys and manipulate the material to something she enjoys. Adriana, maybe can, oh, sorry, I need to scroll back up. Maybe can try and relate the material to her instead of just reading the storyline. Ask about what interests her and start from there.
So it seems like a lot of you realize that in order to have your student relax and open up, you need to get to know them. What are their interests? How can you bring those interests into the curriculum? Maybe they're not super interested in the role play slides, but I'm sure there's a way that you can connect with the material with them. If they are a student at Novakid, they have an avatar on their kid's page. Maybe find out who their avatar is. Is there a way that you can incorporate that into your lessons or engage with her on that in that way? I saw a bunch of you in the comments during when Elena was explaining the kids area. A lot of you were like, where's my kids area? And that's just it. Even if Azra right now is deciding that she's too cool for this, at her heart, in her core, everybody loves to play games. It's a matter of finding out what kind of games she likes to play and what her interests are. And once you break that and help her open up, I'm sure she'll be more interested in playing the games and following the story. So I think everyone said it best when they said to engage with her interests. Let's look at our next one, which is Cassie. And Cassie teaches Minchil. Minchil is a 6-year-old boy from South Korea. Minchil is correctly placed in level 1 for his level, but he finds it difficult to complete the drag and drop activities. He also struggles to use the mouse in general. Let's help Cassie complete the lesson objectives. What should she do? Now, just a note here, as you're thinking of your answers, South Korea is a bit of a special case. In South Korea, when you are born, you are 1 year old. And on January 1st, everyone in the country becomes another year older. This means a child born on December 31st will be 2 years old on January 1st. So although this says that Minchil is 6 years old, he might actually be 4 years old if you were to calculate his non-Korean age. He might not have the same fine motor skills as a 6-year-old. This is something, if you have a lot of South Korean students, that you should anticipate. Perhaps their age will be as much as 2 years off of their actual age. Though they should be correctly placed in the level, they might lack certain motor skills that you would expect from an older student. All right, it seems like we have a lot of great answers using TPR.
There's a good tip from Annie. I jiggle the possible options and ask them which is correct. And when they tell me yes, I drag it for them.
Ooh, that's fantastic. Some of these slides also have like a drag and drop practice slide at the end that you can use. Using a lot of TPR that a lot of you have mentioned, maybe you're going to click your mouse and drag it so they can see what they need to do. This will just take practice. But the curriculum is set up in a way that most of the drag and drop slides will have a read and match slide before them. At first, you would do the read and match slide and try to get them to click on the correct answer, eventually drawing the line to the correct answer, and then moving to the drag and drop slide. As the students go through the curriculum and go through the level, once they get to the higher units, there are less read and match slides and more drag and drop slides. So the curriculum is built in a way that it allows for this scaffolding and this release of control. But I would agree with all of you saying that sometimes you need to jiggle the piece. Sometimes you need to do it for them by asking them yes or no, but eventually with practice, they will be able to do it. Let's look at our next case study from Andrea. Andrea teaches Maya. Maya is a 6-year-old student from Poland. Maya completed level 0, and she was fantastic. But she finds it difficult to complete all of the dialogues because she's in level 1 and she's only just learning to read now. Let's help Andrea teach the role play slides. What should she do? Now, if you are a Novakid teacher, you might know that one of our recent articles in the portal covered teaching the role play slides. It's a fantastic article and there's a fantastic video example. I would suggest watching it. If you aren't a Novakid teacher, there are a lot of great things you could do. You can do the parroting. You can do the repeat after me. In the role play slides within this curriculum, at the very beginning of level 1, the only words in the role play slides are words that the student has already learned in level 0. They're only sight words. For example, one of the characters, his eyes change color. One is green and one is pink. But instead of making the student read the words green and pink, there are pictures instead. So when it comes to them doing the role play slides, they're able to see like my eyes are, which are words that they would have learned already through the curriculum and through their sight words. And then there's a green splotch and a pink splotch. So this scaffolding is made available so that the student can still feel confident during these role play slides. If your student isn't confident, bring out your own little microphone and do some listening and repeating. Once they feel more confident, you can assign them a role and they can tell you who they want to be. There are a lot of great ways that I've seen you've put into the to the chat. And I think they are all things that would benefit most of our students. Let's look at our final case study with JP.
Before we get into the final case study, I just want to highlight, you guys are fantastic. Everybody's typed in, that's Leo. Leo is the character with the eye colors. Kudos to you. Well done.
All right. Yeah, it is Leo. It's great. All of my students love Leo. I really think that he is the most popular character. They all just light up when they see him. Him and Professor Slimosaurus, like the very like good character and then the very not polar.
Yeah. It's wonderful.
So our last case study is JP. JP teaches Kike. Kike is an 8-year-old student from Spain, and he is correctly placed in level 2 for his level. But he is a slower learner and often needs more time to complete each activity. JP often struggles to complete all of the lesson slides. What should JP do? JP do to complete all of the slides in his lessons? So it seems like a lot of you have some really great ideas. It is possible that you might need to redo the lesson. If your student doesn't complete more than 50% of the lesson slides, you should redo the lesson. The next lesson, you can pick up where your student left off and you can continue the lesson. Oftentimes, parents are okay with their student repeating the lesson if they already know that their student is a slow learner. If you communicate this through teacher operations, they will definitely reach out to the parent to help you find the best solution. The next thing I see mentioned is skipping slides that you know are unnecessary. And this is something you can do. You can skip the star slide or the blank pages or the fast finishers. What I don't necessarily recommend is skipping too many of the content slides, because the curriculum is built in a way that the content slides should be followed and in order. Of course, if your student is late or if your student maybe doesn't quite have enough time, skipping 1 or 2 slides might be okay sometimes, but it's not something that I would encourage you to do on a regular basis. It would be better to slow down to Kike's pace. And if you have to redo the lesson, redo the lesson. Or maybe you don't ask as many extension questions. The curriculum is fantastic in a way that allows you to ask all sorts of extension questions, both during the role play dialogues or during the different activities. Maybe you take away 1 or 2 of those so that you're able to complete the lesson objectives. All right, so I think we have come to the point where we are ready for your questions. We've talked about gamification. We've talked about what it is, what it includes, what it's not. We've looked at some slides, and we've also done some troubleshooting through some case studies. I'm sure you have lots of questions.
We've got a couple, and I'm going to address them right now. Also, feel free to submit more questions in the chat box, guys. Do not worry. No question is a stupid question. Just feel free to do that. And we will start with the first one. Are all the drag and drop activities gamification? A question from Gary.
And yes, I would say they are, because you are not introducing the activity. This is something that they are applying what they've learned. They're applying different elements of gameplay. They are applying dragging and dropping or matching activities, but it's not a competitive competition. Yes, it's a competition in that there is a right answer and a wrong answer, but it's not competitive. It doesn't matter if they're correct or they're not correct, because they have multiple opportunities to attempt the game.
All right. We hope that answered the question. And then the second one was from Sonia. I'd like to learn some techniques about how to turn fill in the blank activities and matching slides more fun by using score points and timers, etc.
Oh,
that's a brilliant idea, actually.
I think I would need to think about that for a little bit. Most of my students are very quick with the matching activities or sometimes I will circle the picture first and they have to find the word. But that, again, it would take it more away from the gamification aspect and turn it to more into game-based learning because there's more of a competition there. I'm not sure. I would have to think about that. You could always use a timer on your phone or do like a fake countdown timer where you're like only giving them 10 seconds.
Or an old school alarm clock with like a ding.
Or you could be like, okay, I'm going to go first. I always do that with the tongue twisters. I always say the tongue twister and then I say, okay, your turn, a little faster. I have a student now who, even when he sees the tongue twister slide, a little faster. Like, we haven't even done it once yet. And he's like, a little faster. I'm like, okay. Like,
fun. The only thing that I wouldn't use like a timer bomb. Like, sometimes you can use the Manicam effects and stuff like that. So those images probably not the best choice because you never know how the kid will react. And it also depends on the age. But yeah, those are great ideas. Another question is the Mr. Wildfire. Do we have to finish all the slides in class?
Yes. But
do you always have time to finish all the slides? No.
So yes, you should finish all of the content slides. What I mean by that is this doesn't include the cover slide. This doesn't include your goodbye slide. It doesn't include the intro song or the outro song, and it doesn't include any of the fast finisher slides. Anything within the content area is something you should be completing. Now, I would say that if you know that your student is going to be a little bit slower, go into your slides first, because sometimes there are fast finisher slides throughout the lesson. If you know where those are, you can always skip them and skip over them when you come to them. But that would be the only real instance that I would fully encourage skipping slides. Does it take time to be able to get through all of the slides? Of course. When you're first starting, and when you're first starting anywhere, it's always a little bit difficult to decide how much time you can spend on each slide, how many extension questions you can ask. But as you get more comfortable with the material and with your students, you'll find where you can spend more time and where you can speed up. But at the end of the day, you should be completing 99% of the slides.
That would be ideal.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brittany. Another question is from April Mona. How many times we can redo the lesson? And the answer to that is you can't really redo more than once. I believe this is a question from Novakid teacher. So I would highly recommend to check out one of our recent articles on the teacher portal. I think it was published in December, but I'm not sure which date. But if you just use the search button on the teacher portal and type in redo, you can definitely find the article. It's very extensive, very elaborate, and it will give you a clear idea about redoing classes. I hope this will be useful for other teachers as well.
That's good. And that's good that you mentioned that, because I definitely have heard varying answers in between how many times you can redo it, or if it's a tech problem, how many times you can redo it. So thank you for clearing that up for everyone.
Yes, no worries. We also have a question from Annie. When do children gain access to the kids' world? I believe what you mean is the kids area, and all the students have access to a kids area. This is basically their personal profile, just like you have a personal teacher profile. So yeah, all Novakid students gain access to that area. Another question is, perhaps not all the students are using it, but I'm pretty sure that the majority does. So yeah. Next time you see your students, maybe you can ask them. I know that one of Brittany's students mentioned their avatar to her, and yeah.
More than one have. I've had like 2 Leos, I've had a Marty, and I've had a Bella. Excellent. One student will not let me call Bella within the role play slides. I have to call Bella by the student's real name. Like, this is, she is Bella. Like, this is,
well, it's got to be Bella. I think it's a great way to build a rapport with the student, and it's a great thing to talk about in the very beginning of the lesson for a little warm up. All right. Question from Charvi. I'm wondering if the older students can also access kids area. I believe they do. Wesley Naidu, why can't we control the drag and drop slides in the review lessons? I understand that they should do it independently, but some of them just love making a mess. That's one way to put it. You basically have answered the question. Yes, so the students during the review process, we wanted to make sure that the students are doing the task independently, and this is going to be a sign if their competency is confirmed or not.
Just to add to that though, if you do notice that during these competencies that your student is capable of doing them, but for some reason they misclicked the mouse and therefore they are failed, you can report this to teacher ops. You can let them know with the slide number, with the competency that your student is actually capable of doing this, so that it doesn't trigger those extra lessons. I had a student that this happened to where he was able to do all the activities perfectly, but he had failed enough of them that I knew that that was going to trigger something, and that's not what I wanted. So I did reach out to teacher ops, and they made sure that nothing bad happened and that the student could just continue on.
And remember, there's also a training slide, right, for drag and drop activities. Question from Charvi again, is the kids area exclusive for students who are having NGW lessons? No, I believe all students have access to the kids area. Question from Tess, is it fine if we sometimes skip the role-playing lessons? No. I'm going to be very, very blunt with you guys. No, try to make the most of those lessons.
Even if you have to adapt them in a way that you know your student will be able to talk about them. Because at the end of the day, it's not about them performing the role play perfectly. It's about them interacting with the material. You could circle the words that they know. You could circle the faces and ask, are they happy? Are they sad? Who are they? There are so many questions you can ask and use them as extension slides if they're unable to fully interact with the role play aspect.
Mm-hmm. Another question from Amelia. I'm new and just making my way through the past webinars. I noticed in some of the older webinars, there's a teacher's library link on Google Drive. Is this still the case? I don't think so. Amelia, could you please type in the chat or reach out to us after this webinar if you've been watching the webinars on the teacher portal? Because there should be the teacher's library, you should have it on your page, right?
So. Under the portal.
Yeah.
Well, there's a separate library tab.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we will. I'll mark this question and we'll get back to it, Amelia, if you don't mind. Sidrine Robles is asking, is it okay to use the chat box, especially when explaining the differences between demonstrative forms? Most of the students struggle when demonstrating Amisa's animals. I'm a little bit confused. Okay, so, the first part of the question is about the chat box. So yes.
No, don't use the chat box.
Try not to. Try not to.
As far as the demonstrative pronouns, I find two different strategies work. One, I will use, I don't actually think I have one. One, I'll use a whiteboard and I'll draw the picture for them. And I'll write this is, and like a short arrow, that is, and then a longer arrow. And then I'll write like a 1 in a circle. So they know that's for singular. And then on the bottom, or even on the other side, I'll do these are with the short arrow and those are with the long arrow. So I use that after I've introduced it when it's time for them to do their own activity where they don't have the arrows. And then if I know they're struggling, I'll go and kind of like, so it's not like completely obvious and they're just like, okay. The other thing that I do that really helps is I make them go and get 2 markers or 2 pencils. And we start with one, we say like, this is, that is, this, that, and they repeat it a bunch of times. And then I add in the second one. So sometimes they're like, I don't have a pencil, at which point I tell them, go get a pencil. Like I will wait those 30 seconds. If you want me to extend at the end for 30 seconds, fine, but we're going to use pencils or we're going to use something, because if they're able to hold it and use it, they'll be able to use it better. It's really important if your students in level 1 that they really grasp this in level 1, because it's the first unit of level 2. Also covers demonstrative pronouns. So I find that students who have started in level 1, they make the transition to level 2 a lot easier than students who start in level 2 and are just like demonstrative pronouns. But those are the two strategies that I use that really seem to help my students. And then I write in feedback everything I did that I would have wanted to say in the chat box.
Great tips. Okay, another question from Rochelle. Correct me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I apologize. Should we just continue if they fail the competency unnecessarily? I guess that's what you, what would you do?
Continue the lesson or continue the activity? Because once they fail, so they can attempt the activity as much as they want, but once they do it wrong too many times, the competency will fail automatically, but it won't stop them from completing the activity. So they'll still have all the time they want to complete the activity, but they may have failed it within the first 10 seconds. I still let my student go through it until they are successful, knowing that they are either going to need the extra practice or this is something we can cover if we finish early, at which point then I could message teacher operations to help me fix that. But definitely let your students complete all of the tasks, help them out, and practice until they're able to do it, because you want them to feel like they are successful, even if the little corner says that they aren't. It's really important to keep their motivation and engagement up.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you, Brittany. Okay, guys, thank you very much for your questions. Those questions that have been left unanswered, we've compiled them, and do not worry, we will address them in our upcoming newsletter. So yeah, thank you very much. Before we wrap up, I would like to remind you that today we had 2 contests. I hope you're going to participate. I hope you spotted our Tim the Frog on our presentation slides. Do not type your answers in the chat box, please. You will be able to type them in the feedback form that you are currently seeing in the chat box. So follow the link, fill out the form. I see why you're laughing, Brittany. I know. We are going to reveal the results very, very soon. So fill out the feedback form. There's also going to be a section on different time slots available for our upcoming webinars. We want to make sure we accommodate as many time zones as possible. It's obviously not very easy to do, but we're doing our best. Thank you for participating. Thank you for being so active in the chat today. Great discussion, fantastic topic, wonderful host, Brittany. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, our moderator, Lisa, who's doing all the amazing work behind the scenes, interacting with you guys. So yeah, I think we are ready to
wrap up. Well, thank you. I'll echo what Elena has mentioned. Thank you everyone for coming today. Thank you, Elena, and everyone in teacher operations. It's a big team behind all of us. And I think I can speak for all of the teachers here today that we really appreciate everything that teacher operations does to support our students as well as us. So thank you all. And thank you all, everyone who are here today. And I can't wait to see you next time.
Yeah, me too. Don't forget to subscribe to our Novakid Career YouTube channel. You can also refer to all the previous webinars here. They have been published. And don't forget to follow Novakid Career on Instagram. Share your insights from this webinar, share your ideas, and tag Novakid Career account and get a special prize. So stay tuned. And until next time, bye guys.
Bye.